Why is it that incredibly smart people sometimes just go completely broke? I mean, we've all seen it, right? You see someone driving down the street in a brand new Ferrari, and you instantly assume, wow, they've got it all figured out. But here's the thing, that driver might actually just be navigating a massive liability. True wealth is usually what you don't see.
So, welcome to our explainer on the wealth pyramid. Okay, let's dive into this. Today, we're taking a journey from the everyday mechanics of banking, those invisible forces silently draining or building your accounts, all the way up to the ultimate peak, the psychology of keeping your money. Because as you'll see, understanding the math is really only half the battle. Here is our roadmap for today. First, the mechanics of money. Then, navigating the stock market, followed by the DeFi revolution, the leverage equation, and finally, the psychology of wealth. We're going to build this from the ground up, starting with foundational mechanics and going right up to mastering your mindset.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, the mechanics of money and understanding those invisible forces.
Before we can even think about multiplying our wealth, we absolutely have to understand the invisible forces that are currently draining it. And the big one here is inflation. Now, instead of just thinking of inflation as prices randomly going up, it's better to think of it as a silent, invisible tax on your uninvested capital. It's the slow, continuous erosion of your purchasing power over time. Literally, if your money isn't growing, it's shrinking. And speaking of shrinking, let's talk about taxes. Consider this massive 50% hurdle. Between your income tax, capital gains, sales tax, the whole shebang, the government takes a really significant chunk of virtually every dollar you interact with. So what does this actually mean? Well, the math of wealth creation is a lot heavier than it appears. To net $1 million from a business and actually keep it in your bank account, you realistically need to gross $2 million. And then we have the banks. Instead of visualizing your money locked safely away in some giant steel vault, we need to recognize the reality of fractional reserve banking. Banks act as these highly efficient middlemen. They keep a tiny, tiny fraction of your deposits on hand, and they lease out the rest of your liquidity to other people. They do this to capture interest, and interest is essentially just money's way of charging rent to exist in someone else's hands. When you borrow, you're paying that rent, but when you invest, you collect it. Moving right along to section 2, navigating the stock market. Let's learn the language of investing. So, to start multiplying those assets, we gotta speak the language. You've probably heard the terms bull and bear markets thrown around constantly, right? Bull meaning prices are rising and bear meaning prices are falling. But here's a quick, fun piece of financial trivia for you. These terms actually come from how each of those animals attacks its prey. A bull thrusts its horns up and a bear swipes its paws down. Kinda cool, right? Now, let's talk about shorting. When investors bet against a stock, which is what shorting is, they take on what is technically infinite risk. Why? Because a stock's price doesn't actually have a ceiling. There's no limit to how high it can go. So, if that highly shorted stock unexpectedly rockets upwards, those investors are forced into these really desperate buybacks just to cover their positions. And that triggers cascading liquidations, fueling massive, exponential price jumps to the moon. That, my friends, is the absolute chaos of a short squeeze. Options, on the other hand, completely change this dynamic. They act as time-sensitive bets. An option gives you the right, but crucially not the obligation, to buy or sell an asset at an agreed-upon price within a specific time frame. And what's really interesting about this is how it allows clever investors to hedge their bets without committing all their capital up front. You're basically just paying a small premium for the privilege of having a choice later on.
Next up, section 3, the DeFi revolution. Let's look at the future of finance.
So decentralized finance, or DeFi, is this completely digital new frontier, and its goal is to remove those banking middlemen entirely. Think about it. Traditional finance relies on regulated gatekeepers, closed systems, and painfully high fees. DeFi completely flips the script. In DeFi, immutable code runs on a blockchain. That means incredibly low fees and censorship resistance. Out here, code is law, meaning there are zero human bankers around to deny or delay your transactions. And because code is law, we're seeing the rise of some truly mind-bending mechanics, like the flash loan. This is where you see the true elimination of counterparty risk. A smart contract actually allows you to borrow literally millions of dollars with absolutely zero collateral. How? Because the code itself guarantees the outcome. You borrow the funds, execute a profitable arbitrage trade across different exchanges, and repay the loan, all within the exact same transaction block. Usually this whole thing takes mere seconds.
And if the trade fails, the contract just rewinds the transaction like it never even happened. No harm, no foul. This entire DeFi ecosystem is basically built on 5 core pillars. You've got stablecoins pegged to fiat value, lending and borrowing protocols, decentralized exchanges, margin trading, and automated insurance. Think about how much this transforms traditional processes. For instance, if Farmer Joe needs crop insurance, a smart contract replaces the human claims adjuster entirely. It uses something called an oracle to pull verified real-world weather data. So if temperatures hit 95 degrees for 4 consecutive days, boom, the protocol automatically executes the insurance payout directly to Joe's digital wallet. There are no middlemen and absolutely no waiting periods.
Okay, section 4, the leverage equation. It's all about working smarter, not harder.
So how do we actually use all these tools to build wealth? Well, the answer is leverage. The leverage pyramid breaks down exactly how you can multiply your output. Right at the base, you have labor, getting others to work for you. Above that is capital, using your money to make more money. But the apex, the absolute peak of modern leverage, is found in code and media. Shifting your output to code and media lets you duplicate your efforts infinitely. A well-written algorithm or a digital explainer video works tirelessly 24 hours a day, scaling to an audience of potentially billions, all with zero marginal cost. It's a total game changer.
Let's look at capital leverage in action through the classic real estate loop. You secure a property with, say, a 20% down payment, and you use bank debt for the rest. Then your tenants pay rent, which covers your carrying costs and your loan obligations. Over time, as that property appreciates in value, you capture the entirety of that upside, significantly increasing your net worth, and you did it by deploying other people's money. But listen closely, because all of these mechanics, all this leverage, and all the smart contracts in the world mean absolutely nothing if you cannot master your own emotions. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the psychology of wealth, mastering your ego. There is a profound, absolutely crucial difference between looking rich and being wealthy. Looking rich is loud, right? It's the luxury vehicles, the flashy watches, the highly visible liabilities. Being wealthy, though, that's silent. It's hidden portfolios, appreciating assets, and most importantly, time and peace of mind. This is the essence of the man in the car paradox. When a fancy Ferrari drives past, you rarely admire the driver, you just picture yourself in the driver's seat. Buying things just to manufacture admiration from strangers is a losing financial game. Now consider this staggering figure, $156 billion. Warren Buffett's wealth is obviously legendary, but what's way less discussed is that out of his immense net worth, over $156 billion was generated after his 65th birthday. No way, right? But it's true. This wasn't the result of perfectly timing every single market dip. It was just the quiet, unstoppable force of compound interest given decades to run its course. Time really does remain the absolute greatest variable in finance. And this highlights a really powerful realization captured perfectly by author Morgan Housel. He said, savings is the gap between your ego and your income. A lot of high earners are actually functionally broke because their ego demands lifestyle inflation with every single raise they get, a bigger house, a nicer car. But saving doesn't require a specific goal, like a vacation or a down payment. Saving is simply a mechanism to buy yourself options. It buys you flexibility, and it acts as a permanent shield against your own constantly expanding desires. When you do deploy those savings into the market, your mindset regarding loss has to completely shift. As Housel also points out, we need to think of market volatility as a fee rather than a fine. Just consider Netflix. Their stock delivered an astonishing 35,000% return between 2002 and 2018. But during that massive run, it spent 94% of the time trading strictly below its previous all-time high. Investors had to endure constant emotional discomfort. But that discomfort wasn't a penalty. It was simply the required price of admission for life-changing gains. So as we wrap up this explainer today, just remember that the highest dividend money pays is not some luxury good. The ultimate dividends of wealth is the freedom to control your own schedule. It's that amazing ability to wake up and declare, I can do whatever I want today. So take a step back and look at your financial habits, your career, your spending. What are you actually trading your time for? True wealth isn't about accumulating more. It's about needing less. I really hope this sparked some curiosity for you today.